been 7 hours and 50 days since you took your love away.
Oh, you motherfuckers knew I was gonna start with this. I couldn't start with another song. You have to start with this one. Nothing compares to you. Every single person that is listening to the podcast right now as that organ started took you right back to 1990, to maybe, if you're my age, being on the school bus, getting into a fight with Paul Blivin because he thinks Milli Vanilli is better than Sinead O'Connor. And I'm like, you are Spoogle. You are Spoogle. Like I said, it is Nothing Compares to You. It's by Sinead O'Connor off her 1990 sophomore record, I Do Not Want What I Haven't Got. That's a great title, man. It's also number 408 out of 500 on the 500 with me, the man, the myth, the king of fleece, the king Cadogal, the Wang Zuki himself, Josh Adam Myers. Hi, everybody. How are you guys doing? You guys good? I don't know why I'm waiting for you to answer. There's no way you can answer unless you tweet at me. Tweet at me, at Josh Adam Myers. Thank you for joining me on the only podcast where we're going through Rolling Stone Magazine's list of the 500 greatest albums. This is why I love doing the podcast, because you see an album that's coming up on the list and you're like, fuck, man, I don't know how, I just want to get to the one after it because I don't know how I'm going to get through this one. And this one smacked me across the face so hard, man. I got sad when we stopped the recording of the podcast, when this one was done, because I knew I had to put this album to bed and move on to The Clash, which I'm totally stoked about. Dude, I mean, Sandinista is the shit. But I really, really enjoyed this one a lot. I really enjoyed it a lot. And let's find out about it. Why not? It was released on March 20th, 1990 on Ensign and Chrysalis Records and produced by Nellie Hooper, Chris Burkett, Sean Divot, and Sinead O'Connor. And like I said at the beginning, it is her second record. Born Sinead Marie Bernadette O'Connor. Man, that is one Wang Zuki of a name. On December 8th, 1966 in Glenageary, Dublin, Ireland. She was the third of 5 children. Now, after her parents' divorce in 79, and due to her mother's extreme emotional and physical abuse, she went to live with her dad. But then in her teens, she got into trouble with truancy and shoplifting. You know what kids do. And was sent to 18 months in a Catholic juvenile detention center. What if I would have read off? It was like she was truant, she was shoplifting, started an illegal underground counterfeit money laundering program with the Japanese Yakuza, and then she got sent to 18 months at a Catholic juvenile detention center. Would everybody listening, all the police army, be like, holy shit, man, I think I fucks with Sinead O'Connor now. But while she was at juvenile detention center, her musical development thrived and her talents were noticeable. Then she got out. She started a band called Ton Ton Macoute while she was still in school, but dropped out to pursue her career in, guess what? Singing. Around that time, her abusive mother was killed in an automobile accident, which complicated Sinead's past issues. She quit her band and was noticed as a solo artist and signed to a solo record deal with Ensign Records at 17 years old. But here's the deal. Sinead O'Connor wasn't a typical 17-year-old. She rebelled against the record execs who wanted her to grow her hair out long and wear miniskirts to sexualize her. But this little lady has attitude. She's outspoken, she's controversial, she got political views about Ireland. Sinead is the shit. And Sinead said, no, I am not going to wear mini skirts. I am not growing my hair out. I am going right to the barbershop. I'm shaving my doodad, my Gulliver, my head, and this is the way I'm going to rock. She got the ex-head of U2's record label as her manager. She co-wrote a song with The Edge for a soundtrack and sang on World Party's debut album before starting her own debut. Then she got pregnant with her first child during the recording of said album. Her first record, 1987's The Lion and the Cobra, was a hit, earned rave reviews and college radio airplay, won a bunch of award nominations. What did she do? She took all that acclaim and energy and put that back into this confessional, emotionally bare second record. And yes, a lot of the songs were centered around the relationship between her and her late mother. But then also, she's talking about her past relationships. And she's expressing very, very political views. I don't know how to even say it. She's expressing, that's all I know. And this album went on to sell 7 million records, and in my opinion, changing the tone of the rest of the alternative music. Like, it created this dark underbelly that clashed with all the other contemporaries around that time. And I found this quote by Sinead, and I feel like it's the best. Like, it's dope. I was a square peg in a round hole. I saw myself as a protest singer, really. I was representing child abuse survivors. That's how I saw myself. So I didn't fit in to the pop star thing. You think? This is an incredible record. And what's so cool about doing this podcast is we have our bookers, Melissa and Emily, and they recommend people. And I'm like, yeah, dude, because we're trying to find the perfect guest for each record. I really want it to feel like it's somebody that like, not just like, I want you guys, because you know I don't know shit about it, and I hear what everybody's saying online. They're like, this day you can only know Stone Temple Pilots, and that's true. I'm becoming a fan, and it's dope when I get to sit down with somebody that is an actual fan of the record, and then also someone I don't know very well, but I've heard of. And today we have a guest that I can't rave enough about. From Tegan and Sara, Sarah Quin. Of course, you guys have heard of Tegan and Sara. It's her and her sister, her identical twin sister, and they've released 8 studio records. Their 9th one, Hey, We're Just Like You, the remixes just came out last Friday on Sire Records. This was so much fun because I had heard of Tegan and Sara. I knew a couple of their songs. I'm not saying I was like a huge fan. You're like, yeah, dude, like it's good music. But like, I was nervous about this interview because like I'm who I am and Sarah's who she is, and I'm so abrasive and I can be funny and stuff, and like, you know, I can already think like, I'm like, all right, Rita Wilson's gonna hate me just because of like the way that I am. But here's the thing, man, right from the beginning, like Sarah was just so funny and so down. Like, I'm just so happy that this is the way that we're going to honor this record because it 100% deserves it. Rate, review, and most importantly, subscribe to the 500 and listen free on all platforms, anywhere you get your pods. But if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, I'm telling you guys, I need you to do this. Leave a review. Leave a 5-star rating and leave a review for us. I don't care what you say. You can just write, fuck the 500. But just do it because it helps us. Also, take a screenshot of the way you're listening to the 500 today, and I want you guys to post that on your Instagram stories, tag me at Josh Adam Myers, and hashtag the 500 podcast, and maybe tag Sarah Quin, because it's dope. Follow me at Josh Adam Myers on all social media. Email the podcast at 500podcast@gmail.com, and follow the Facebook group, The 500 Podcast with Jam, and the 500 Podcast fan page, both on Facebook. And for all things 500, go to our website, the500podcast.com. Well, guys, nothing left to say, but here we go with 408. I do not want what I haven't got by Sinead O'Connor. Enjoy. What's up, Fleece Army? Before we get to our guests, I want to introduce you to our new sponsor, Sunset Lake CBD. Now, as you know, I love marijuana, but I can't do it before I do stand-up or before I record the pod. So I use CBD because it mellows me out. And I am excited to start working with Sunset Lake CBD. Dude, they have the goods. Sunset Lake CBD is located in Albrook, Vermont, right outside of Burlington, and they are family owned and have been doing this shit since 2018. All of their hemp is 100% pesticide free, and they only use organic fertilizers. And if you like to smoke cannabis but don't want to get stoned, they have actual CBD hemp flower. They sent me some. It's dope. They have pre-rolls. If you don't have the time to do a bong hit or you're out in public, they have pre-rolls. The pre-rolls are dope. And if you're not a smoker, they have gummies, topical salves, which they've given me because I hurt my neck. And not going to lie, it actually helped. And they have a CBD oil with 750 milligrams of CBD that you can just put inside your mouth. Or you can give it to your dog. Because I gave it to my dog, and it's helped her paw. I believe in this company, or I wouldn't promote them. Check them out at sunsetlakecbd.com. Use the promo code JAM500 for 15% off your next purchase. Thank you, Sunset Lake CBD. Fleece Army, you know what to do. Go to sunsetlakecbd.com. It's been Sarah Quin and Sarah Quin. Sarah Quin, Sarah Quin. Hit me with the We just woke up. I'm not gonna. All right, so one, thank you for coming on. Two, like I'm in love with this record, and you know, like most people know about Sinead O'Connor through Nothing Compares to You, and for most, it ends right there. So to find someone that's a huge fan of Sinead and this record, I find fascinating because now I am. So I want you to tell me, like, give me like the brief history of your relationship with Sinead and with this record.
Sure. Yeah. So. As we discussed sort of before we hit record, we're similar ages. I was born in 1980, and I grew up in a sort of unique situation in that my parents were kind of rockers. They were young when they had us. They were, I think my mom was 21, turning 22 when she had my sister and I. And my parents were just like out of high school, long-haired kind of hippies, kind of making that transition into like 80s rock music. And after my parents got divorced, my mom sort of took a really sort of different path with the music that she was interested in. And actually it was my dad who sort of had a little bit more eclectic taste. He listened to a lot of like Lyle Lovett and the Neville Brothers. And actually my first memory of Sinead O'Connor was actually with my dad. And it was a song called Troy. I know people think it's Nothing Compares to You, but like the truth is,
I feel like the idiot for assuming. See what happens when you assume?
No, I mean that's like no, I think that is true, and I think that the vast majority of people connect not just the song, but the sort of like cultural phenomenon that was Sinead O'Connor at that time, and then also sort of the look and the head and the video, and there was just like this like, you know, it was just like a huge impactful moment. But for me, I remember the first time hearing her voice, and specifically a song called Troy, and feeling like haunted by that, and feeling sort of like freaked out, like what does this song mean? And both my sister and I were sort of these like precocious young kids who always liked whatever our parents liked, and I'm sure there was lots of raised eyebrows when we would like come to school and be like, have you all heard Krista Berg's Spanish Train? Patricia the Stripper is a deep cut, and I think you should check it out. Like, you know, like it was, I think a lot of people were just listening to like Janet Jackson and New Kids on the Block.
Yeah, we're listening to the Backyardigans right now. I don't know about you, but the Wiggles or whatever they're called, that's what we're into. Exactly.
So I think we were really influenced by our parents. But yes, Nothing Compares to You. And I mean that entire album really was, I think if you were someone who was listening to music at that time, even if you were a parent raising children, it was on the radio, it was on whatever. In Canada, we had Much Music, not MTV, but you were seeing the videos and you were caught up in the sort of like the excitement and also controversy of Sinead O'Connor. Yes. I feel like I don't remember a time where people weren't praising her, but also critiquing her, which is sort of indicative of that era of like sort of, you know, we've all, indicative of even this era where we sort of love a bad boy, but we don't really like a woman who pushes boundaries, especially when they're, you know, in the in the realm of like religious or, like equity between men and women, whatever it is. So I also remember thinking like she was this kind of, it wasn't just like, oh my God, this voice, or oh my God, this song. It was actually like, there was something sort of provocative about her that I remember even as a kid being like, who is this? What is this?
Yeah. I mean, even the music video for Nothing Compares to You is like ballsy. I don't even know.
Sure.
Yeah, just the it's like when it's D'Angelo before D'Angelo did that, where his is this like sexy love song and hers is this song about like longing and needing and being crushed, and then the shaved head and the single teardrop just that was so many people's introduction. That was mine. But also you said something that I found like really interesting is that like she was so big and we're the same age basically. And I still can remember my 10 and 11-year-old, guy friends loving this song. That's how big Nothing Compares to You was. Mm-hmm. And it just like, I remember being in the back of the bus and like singing it. And then we all have like the single of it. And then it was just like you said, it feels like she was like, just, it was controversial, like things that she did throughout the rest of her career that I feel like if it was like you said, if it was a guy, I don't know if that happens. I feel like they just go, it's him being him and him just stating his case. But with her, it was almost like people were like, oh no, you can't do that. You can't say that. You can't feel like that. How did seeing that at such a young age like influence you musically and just personally?
It's interesting, as you're talking about the video too with the shaved head, as I was a young queer person at that time, like I would never have had the language or perhaps even the I hadn't quite like lined up all the pieces, but internally I knew I was really different. And I knew I have this language now. I would not have been able to say this then, but I was dealing with the fact that I recognized that my gender expression as a young girl was not like my best friend across the street who loved dresses and who was into like, was in dance classes and liked pink and was pretty, femme traditional kind of kid. And, I wanted my hair really short like my dad, and I only wanted one earring. And I was really much more drawn to androgynous or even sort of like traditionally boy clothes or whatever. And, back then, we would have called that just tomboy, and you sort of wrote it off as like, oh, they're just, they like their dad. They're more like their dad or whatever. But I think that was probably some of the early adoption I already had, to this idea that I was going to be different, that I felt different, that I identified differently than other people. And I don't think I necessarily understood the sexuality part of it because I was like still a kid, but I remember any woman I saw, who was not presenting themselves in this really feminine way, even if they were like a super badass, like somebody like Madonna or Kate Bush or, like Janet Jackson or whatever. Like I could recognize the power and the sort of like, the sort of like, amazingness of those women, but I didn't like identify as them, whereas I remember seeing Sinead O'Connor or like Annie Lennox or like anyone that was like sort of like rebuffing or like pushing against those kind of like gender expression norms. I would sort of feel like, oh, it's bad, like, oh, I like that Sinead O'Connor has a shaved head, like what does that mean? And so yeah, I think that whereas like for so many people it was kind of like, wow, she's weird. She has a shaved head. She's also like stunning. I
Gorgeous.
mean, she's like,
very.
Like she's like a stunning person to look at in that video. Like there's just something, shaved head or not, she's so beautiful and emotive, and like the camera loves her, and it's so hard to look away. But I think for me, I was reading that as a young kid as like, I'm like looking around like, is everybody else like thrilled by this? Like, I really, and again, it wasn't attraction, but it was an identifying with the way that she was expressing herself. In terms of like her being like provocative or bad, I mean, the biggest one, of course, or the biggest moment I remember is the tearing up of the picture of the Pope. And I remember that being a conversation in and around my family. And my parents were self-proclaimed recovering Catholics. They had all grown up in the Catholic Church, and my mom had gone to like a rough and tumble Catholic boarding school in Prelate, Saskatchewan, which is like, they couldn't get any rougher than that. It was like being sent to like a work camp. It was
wow.
the nuns would like hit everybody.
You're
and,
blowing
like,
my mind right now, because my Canadian like niceties and all of that are being like just pushed away. Like, is there this underground like just fight club in Alberta?
Oppressive Catholicism does not stop at the border.
Sure,
okay, we have, but so my mom and my dad both grew up going to Catholic church and going to Catholic school, and as adults we're sort of like no thanks, we're not doing that whole thing. No one claimed themselves as an atheist, but in my family there was no religion. And I remember there was a complicated reaction to Sinead O'Connor ripping up a picture of the Pope, and I think it had more to do with, maybe that is where the Canadian comes in. There was something about like, we don't disagree with what she's doing. Actually, she's totally on, she's nailing this. But, at least at that time in Canada, it was just not polite to be so political. It was not, it was such a divisive kind of moment where it was like, I remember there was a sort of like good for her, but also a little bit of like, take it easy, like, so, yeah.
I came into this record with really preconceived notions of how I was going to enjoy this. I was like, all right, I'll like Nothing Compares to You, and then that'll be it. And this isn't an album that you just push aside as 90s pop, man. I think that this is one of the most somber, confessional, and emotionally bare records I might have listened to so far on this list. And I think this record is as political as anything that Rage Against the Machine has done, or John Lennon. This is a record that not only deserves to be on the list, but and going off of what you're saying, and before we get into the tracks, I wanted to ask you this: if Sinead doesn't push the political boundaries, the abuse boundaries, and her message, how big does Sinead O'Connor get, do you think?
I always sort of have this kind of question in my mind about a lot of our sort of cultural powerhouse women. Like when you look back through, especially the last, like, let's call it 40 years, you see a lot of women who are, to use a term that we're all very comfortable with these days, like I think a lot of women were gaslighted. I think that they were mistreated, they were mishandled, they were taken advantage of, they were abused, they were gaslighted, all of these things. And it's like, if you don't have a mental breakdown and disappear, if you're, I don't know, a Fiona Apple or Lauryn Hill or Sinead O'Connor or whoever, the tremendous pressure culturally, socially, and industry wide, like that these women were under, and to be scrutinized and to be critiqued in the way that they were, to say nothing of the misogyny that was just so acceptable. I think that I have no idea if Sinead O'Connor would have been more popular or would have sustained that popularity if she had been less political. But what's clear to me is that, for so many women, it was untenable. Fame and success and being in the spotlight was untenable. How could you not collapse? How could you not, sort of have to disappear or implode or explode? And I think Sinead O'Connor is just like, to me, such like a prime example of someone who's so heroic and so brave in the same category as her contemporaries, people like you mentioned, like Bob Dylan or, Rage Against the Machine. But these men were sort of like, they were heroic and they were lifted up and they were iconoclast talking about culture and society, and they were told you're a hero. Whereas I think with women that we sort of we still do this culturally and socially, where it's like someone speaks out, and some of us do agree, maybe a lot of us agree, but we're also scared to be supporting someone like that, because people come for those people, and it's really hard to stand shoulder to shoulder with them as allies. And I think Sinead O'Connor is one of those people who I think is really like, I think that she's like, she's a casualty of that.
Yeah. I would, you mentioned God, you said that so right. Everybody that you mentioned, Lauryn Hill, Fiona Apple, I mean, they're outspoken. They've spoken their heart, their truth, and the public just goes, "You're crazy, get out of here." And
it's a threat. They're a threat. Everything that those women, and I mean, there's countless. I'm forgetting, like, I mean, there's just like almost all of them. Like, they're countless women, and they are pushing back. And again, they're also coming from a very like heteronormative kind of place. Like, these are women who were writing about men and children and the church and the state and my body and my rights and all of these things. And that's an extreme threat to the way that our society and our capitalism works. And so when you go back and you look at what these women were saying, even though they were personal songs and personal messages, they were political messages, and you couldn't delineate between those two things.
Yeah. All right. Well, I feel like we should this is a perfect place to dive right into the record, because this is how Sinead O'Connor opens her second record. She opens it with the Serenity Prayer, which if people don't know what the Serenity Prayer is, it's by American theologian Reinhold Niebuhr.
God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Courage to change the things I can. And the wisdom to know the difference.
And it's been popularized in, I think, every 12-step program. It's about acceptance. And here, let's just play it. Peter, open up 337. Play that.
I should have hatred for you. But I do not have any.
This is a bold choice, not just to open up the song with the Serenity Prayer or open up the album with the Serenity Prayer, but she opens it up with I think it's like 7 minutes, and it's just the most confessional and like stark vocals, and there's no drums, no anything, just orchestral strings behind her. And whoever she's talking about, I mean, this is just cutting right through it. So I was wondering, like, who do you think she's talking about?
I mean, one thing I think is really interesting, and I mean, I haven't thought, this is all really off the cuff. I haven't really like thought a ton about it or articulated all this.
All cuff. I want only cuff.
One of the things that I find really interesting is that, it's obvious to me, I mean, again, I'm like really stretching here, but like, or maybe I'm not, but this is a person who has obviously grown up, a believer, spiritual, religious, whatever you want to say. Like, this is like somebody who is like, everything about her, especially on this album, it's like the betrayal could be like, it could be a lover, it could be a man, it could be, whatever. But there's also this kind of like, I think, larger story, larger betrayal of religion, of this belief system,
Sure.
And this kind of like this world that I think that she was raised in, and then and she is lashing out at that, which I think is, again, like, it can be distilled down to like the very personal real life relationship, or it could be something much bigger and spiritual.
Yeah, because it's about resistance, whether it's to the church and the message that they're putting across, or it could be her ex-husband.
Sure.
Could be about her mother. It could be about her sexuality. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, because in 2000, Sinead came out as a lesbian, but in 2005, then she said she was only a quarter gay.
Yeah.
And by 2014,
it's like all my ex-girlfriends.
Yeah. She said she didn't believe in labels and was attracted to whomever. So I wanted to ask you this, being that you and your sister are icons, was there a moment or feeling that influenced you to come out publicly?
Not really. Like, I think our situation was so unique in that our career had already, I use that's like generous. We had already started performing and thinking of ourselves in terms of like a band in high school, and I wasn't out yet.
Yeah.
And we started to be, to play shows and to do music press and radio and that type of thing. And right away, I think because there was this parallel between like coming out as a musician and coming out as my like identity, they were happening kind of at the same time. And so when I got out of high school, I had like a pretty uncomfortable conversation with my mom, like I mean, within months of me graduating, where she was like, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? Are you going to get a job? Are you gay? Like, you know, like there was like, it was kind of like, we got everything out.
You're going to pay me back for what are you going to do? You know, you owe us money.
Yeah, we were kind of like establishing who and what and, you know, what I was and what I was going to do. And that was all happening really at the same time as Tegan and I sort of were like finding our footing in the music industry as a band. And so I don't remember really having much of a conversation about like coming out publicly. I was coming out. So it was like, because those things were happening simultaneously, I never felt like I wasn't out in the music industry. I just was like, suddenly I was out in my life. And I was also having all these conversations with music journalists and radio DJs and music industry people. And there was just this kind of like, I mean, we looked really gay after high school.
I know. I was going to say,
nobody was like, no, are you serious? You know,
wait, are you telling me with the Bieber haircuts?
Yeah, like people were,
the two Bieber haircuts.
Were not, nobody knew Bieber then, but they were like, you are women with short hair and you don't wear makeup and you look kind of gay and like, are you gay? And I think because that was just how it happened, it saved us from that turmoil of like, should I or shouldn't I, or people think I'm straight, should I tell them I'm gay? We just didn't have any of that.
Yeah, you're right. I looked at a lot of those old pictures, and I think they'd be more shocked if you would have come out as straight. Do you know what I mean?
No, you know what's amazing to me? It still happens to this day. Like, some people just don't, like, I mean, I felt like I was like radiating gay. Like, I just felt like I got out of high school and I was like liberated. Like, I cut my hair off. I had a girlfriend. I dressed kind of gay and 90s gay. And I have never had more interest. I remember I had a part-time job, and it's like every guy I worked with was constantly trying to go out to the bar with me. And I would be like, I'm gay. Like, do I have to wear a fucking t-shirt? Like, what the hell? Like, you know, to me, I looked so gay, and it was like, but it was, I've sort of reconciled this by, I was glowing. I mean, I was so liberated and I was so excited. And I just was like, me, you know, I was charismatic and I was charming. And I don't think the guys were like, she seems gay. I think they just were like, she seems young and fun and hot and I'm a dude. So I guess I just will look past all the other stuff. I don't know. It was weird.
All right. I got to ask, because you said it, what is 90s gay lesbian wardrobe? Because you said, because I'm dressing 90s gay. I was
like, for me, when I look back, there were certain trends. Like, I really wanted a short haircut, which I actually now look back, like there's a couple versions of the haircut I had that I'm like, it's sick. Like, it looks awesome. But I think I was really kind of like bringing into focus that idea that I wanted to be more androgynous. So that meant like having that kind of more like male barbershop kind of haircut. I remember like I didn't want like a feminized, like elfin little like sideburns that girls would do in the 90s, you know, like kind of raver style.
Yeah, like the Lori Petty.
Yeah, or like wispy, like they would get their hair cut short, but it would like be like these like elfin, like they were, I don't know what it was, and it was like, or like baby bangs. Like I was like, no, I'm like,
I miss the 90s so much right now. Oh my God. I've loved every girl you're explaining. I'm like, is she single? Because I would date her.
No, but me too. And I could differentiate. Like, I grew up with a lot of like ravers and, you know, skater girls and whatever. Like, you know, they all looked like, to me, like Chloe Sevigny kids or whatever.
Raver, dude, late 90s raver girls, in my opinion, are the hottest girls.
I agree.
In the world. And you know what's funny is that because, and thank God there was no camera phones around, because I would have had, like, if there were any pictures of me with the raver girls, like, it would be so embarrassing because they were dressed, and you remember it was like you said, the short haircut. Yeah. They had like, you know, like a half shirt on,
always
with, like,
a belly top
with wings,
mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And then the Jinko pants, and there's glitter and stickers
Jinko
on them. But the problem is, I was dressed exactly like them, so we would.
Yes, but same. Like, this is the thing, right? Like, I identify, like, I would go to raves and I would see the DJs and the guys that were hanging out with those girls, and I wanted to look like them. So like, in some weird way, I tried to emulate that. Like, I got the boy, these are all stupid binaries now, but like, or like stupid to talk in this way, but like, I would get the boy version of that hair. I wanted bleached hair. I wanted a short haircut. But then it was also this weird thing where I was out of high school when I came out. And I sort of had this sense of like, I'm a new me. I'm not a raver anymore. I'm an adult me who's starting a music career. And so I have a few years of lost fashion, just where I was trying out anything. So like there was a lot of polar fleece. There was some sandals. There was like a not giant, like it's one thing to wear Jinko pants and like be seriously wearing enough fabric on your body to like make clothes for a whole village. But it is another thing to kind of then slim down. Like I just was wearing pants that looked the wrong size. Like I wasn't wearing like giant pants that said to the world, like, hello, I'm a huge raver. Like it was more like I actually look like the way I probably should dress now as a 40-year-old. Like now I'm like, now I would be able to dress like that and it looked fine. But yeah, I did not feel like we masked or hid our identity well. And that was a blessing because it just meant that we kind of like exploded onto the music scene as gay people. And that was hard. And it was really challenging. And there's been 2 decades of like ups and downs around what it means to sort of be an out queer person in the music industry. But I am glad that we didn't have to struggle, or not to like poke fun at somebody like Sinead O'Connor. I think sexuality is complicated. Like a lot of people do come out and then they're like, whoa, I'm going to dial that back. Or they feel resentful because now it's like their whole identity is about this one statement or one relationship. And like, I get all of that. It's a hassle.
Yeah, completely. All right, moving on to the second song, and this is where the album really starts. It shows not just, she opens with this very like still somber song, and then she drops I Am Stretched on Your Grave, which in my opinion almost sounds like a Tony song. Peter, play the intro. Dude, she's got some New Jack swing in her. I mean, I was not expecting that. I was not expecting her to use a James Brown funky drummer sample. And Sinead is singing the English translation of an anonymous 17th century Irish poem that had been set to a hymnal melody by Irish musician Philip King in 1979. The thing about this song is that she does this inflection a few times in it that just gives me chills. Peter, play 258. Dude, I mean, that might be my favorite moment on the entire record. Just that little shift in her note. Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like what's so interesting to me too, and again, not to sort of like belabor this, but like, why not? Because we've had to live through hundreds of years of it, but like women just are so underestimated in what their abilities are and, their authorship. And this whole album, I mean, Save for Nothing Compares to You, written by Prince, everything on that album, is I mean, like you look at albums now and it's like paragraphs. It's like song written by like entire city of Cincinnati, like it's just like, and there's nothing wrong with that. It takes a lot of people to make magic. But when you look at this album, like these ideas, these, whether it's the production ideas or what she was reading or what she's influenced by, I mean, like these are really sophisticated compositions. They're not pop songs. And they're also reaching back into all these different genres. There is a little bit of R&B, hip hop. There is a little bit of like world music, spiritual stuff. There is sort of like religious chanting type thing. Like she really had like she was picking from a lot of different areas, and it just sort of shows her creative brilliance at that age.
This, even though she didn't write this, but she connects this through the emotion, the way she's singing, and you feel like she is still talking about her relationship with her mother.
Yeah.
Like this, it might not have been her words, but man, did she put the stank on it, and it just like it's a Sinead O'Connor song, and it just completely flows, and that goes into Three Babies, and this was the fourth and final single, and it kind of starts off as this soft lifting waltz that grows in passion. And what I love about this record is there's so many powerful moments, and this one at 2:17 is one of them. Peter, play it.
No longer mad like a horse, I'm still wild, but not lost from the thing that I've chosen to be. And it's 'cause you've read me, silenced me, still me, prove things I never believed.
So you don't have to understand the lyrics
No.
because her voice motivates the emotions that you're experiencing, and regardless, I mean, it's so powerful, and yet so simple. And it's just like at this point on my first listen to this record, I'm like, holy shit, this is a record I should not have poo-pooed whatsoever.
To me, there's something like just fresh listening right now. It's like, it feels extremely operatic too. Like there's something about what's happening, musically, and then what's happening with the sort of top line of her voice that it's making me think a little bit of Adele as well. Like there's this kind of like, try as you might, you cannot resist what she does when those sort of like moments happen. It gives you a full body rush, and that's just like musical math. Like she's doing something and creating these moments that are electric. And it also is just like, again, listening to her now, like when you think about the era in which this music was released, not that unlike actually the era that music is in right now, but women are doing this, they're singing in a sexy way. They're singing in a way that is sort of like, is ornate or, if
Sexualized.
They're sexualized, even when they're empowered, like someone like Madonna. But like, this is like full on fucking rage. Like, I mean, she is singing with rage and anger and passion. And again, I think when men sing this way, people are they respond to it the same way they do when they see like a man riding a horse in the 5 millionth military war movie. Like they're just like, yes, another man doing something angry. Whereas like, I think when women do this, it also put people off. What is she so upset about? Why it doesn't sound good or whatever it is. And listening to this now, I'm just like, how could you deny this is not like spectacular?
Oh, completely. And that's so true what you just said. So this is an honest expression of Sinead's feelings about her miscarriages, but it's also been interpreted by some people as being about the complicated emotions after having abortions. So this is 1990. And this is a record that, because of Nothing Compares to You, is, I mean, it's been bought. I think 10 million like copies of this were sold in the first year. And it's just like, to be able to push that message, I mean, how much emotion to get that out. So I wanted to ask you, like, being that you're a songwriter, what was the hardest emotional song for you to put out with Tegan?
I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't have any songs written about my abortions. I haven't had any. Not to make light of it, but like I don't have music about what are sort of culturally or socially controversial things. Like I'm sort of like, I stand in awe at someone like Sinead O'Connor, even then and now, like to discuss these things. I think we travel in a world that's much more acceptable socially and culturally, like breakups, being dumped, even like, the sort of more zoomed out existential life and death kind of stuff. And I don't know if that's just that we haven't zeroed in on things that are more provocative. I mean, the idea that we are queer has always been sort of controversial. And especially when I think back to like when we first started putting out music, it was sort of like one of those situations where by identifying as queer, we also, it was socially acceptable at the time to have people write and say things to us that were so disgusting and so awful.
Yeah.
And, but it wasn't necessarily our relationship that was so provocative or unbelievable. It was just the idea that we were talking about other women. That was hard. But when I think about what Sinead O'Connor was doing then, but also imagine a record coming out now with these songs on it. Imagine Ariana Grande putting out her third single and it was about her be feeling upset about her abortion. It's just like, I think still to this day, the idea that whatever Sinead was singing about, it's so bare, it's so raw, it's so intense.
Yeah. Wow. I was trying to think as you said that, like, who do you think is putting out songs right now that are female, that are this emotionally open and raw?
I mean, my first thought is Beyonce, I think probably there's tons of artists and musicians. I mean, there's like zillions and zillions and zillions of us. Like we're all making, crazy music and all kinds of music and talking about personal things. But at like the level you're talking about, to sell 10 million records in 1990, like the equivalent of someone who is just like gigantic, epic, everyone knows her. Like, yeah, I don't know. I think Beyonce singing about her relationship and her identity and her blackness and her, her sexuality and her forgiving her husband for cheating. I mean, these are things that are like, man, that is like, those are really tough, especially when you are like, you are a sort of a cultural icon, to like put that stuff out into art and have people listen to it, critique it, think about it. I think somebody like Beyonce to me is like up there.
Do you think that a lot of female artists are afraid of the pushback that they're going to get? Like, because you mentioned Ariana Grande and people like Katy Perry, and I'm just trying to think of who are the huge, on that Beyonce level. Do you know what I mean? Where they're selling 10 to 20 million records. Like, do you think it's fear of like losing audience or
Sure.
fear of?
Look at Taylor. I mean, I don't know if you watched that Taylor Swift documentary that came out last year, or
I didn't.
No, this year.
But I want to now.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's this like really interesting moment where she's like, you see behind the scenes of her with her, I think it's her mom and maybe her publicist, but she's talking about just wanting to tweet, just like write a political statement, and like the labor and the hand wringing that goes into her finally coming out with a public statement. I think if I just heard about it, I'd sort of roll my eyes, but like watching it, like seeing it actually go down, I had this moment where I was like, man, like Taylor Swift is, we say like, oh, she's just a person, she should just say something, but she represents this whole ecosystem of people and ideas and community and church and industry and family and cultural values and all of these things. And I think I sometimes forget that, like, I live pretty free. I don't adhere to these things. I'm not worried about pissing off the church or my country radio listeners or, a politician. Like I've always forged a path sort of outside of the mainstream. But when you think of somebody like Katy Perry or Ariana Grande or Taylor Swift, I think that they do they sort of built their worlds inside of those inside of those structures. And so to like try to dismantle those can be really overwhelming. I was also going to say, there's something about this album. I would never have connected these two artists together, but there's actually something right now that's making me think a lot of Hayley Williams from Paramore and her solo record that just came out under Petals for Armor. This to me is like a really profound album where she is talking about really intense stuff. I mean, the first single is, I think that like the first lines have the word rage in them, and she is talking about, her personal relationship and marriage that dissolved. And she's talking about, in the press now, she's talking about what it was like to be a young person coming up in the music industry and the things that she went through. And it's reminding me a little bit of Sinead O'Connor in that, like, those are provocative things to talk about when you've never spoken about them before. And them making this connection right now though between those two. I mean, I don't think Hayley and Paramore are necessarily confined to the same pop bubble that like Katy Perry and I don't know, all these big stars are. I think they sort of operate in their own lane, but there's still something quite provocative and brave about that, I think.
Well, to go off of that, because that then brings us to The Emperor's New Clothes. I mean, this is a song about her proclaiming her independence from the hypocritical society and her Catholic upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
But so you're saying something and just like her ripping the picture of the Pope. It reminds me of Like the pushback that Sinead got from that reminds me of Natalie Maines
Oh,
from the
sure.
Dixie Chicks making a political statement about George Bush. And what do people do? They attack her more than if my friend Tom Murillo would say something political where they would just go, yeah, he's crazy. But it felt like it's these vicious attacks.
Yeah.
That these artists, especially women, get for speaking their mind and speaking their truth. And it blows my mind. It's so hypocritical.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And it's important, I think, I think as we're sort of like sitting in this really interesting cultural moment and really important, cultural moment, whether we're like looking at like the Black Lives Matter movement, or we're looking at the inequities that are faced right now by people during this COVID-19, and the inequities of healthcare in the United States, and just the sort of like toxicity of like male culture and how that's being sort of like unwound in all these different industries. Like, it's important to like, I think sometimes we sort of like write some of this stuff off, like when we're like, oh, Sinead O'Connor, like she really pushed people's buttons because she ripped up a picture of the Pope. Okay, but what do the majority of people really understand about what she was saying? She was saying that she was talking about the Catholic Church and sexual abuse of children within the church. And, she was well ahead of her time, because now, to talk about those things publicly, we all sort of go like, yeah, that was this, we really understand this now. And this is a real nightmare and holy shit. But we don't look at her as like one of the first people, one of the brave front people who said like, this is disgusting. This is horrible. This is a nightmare. This is a betrayal. We must stop this. And, I think that when we're looking at, people who are provocative, whether, whatever they're saying, I think sometimes we as a society, we're really quick to say, well, I don't agree with whatever that is or whatever they're trying to say. And we sort of stop there without like looking deeper and drilling down into like, what might actually be causing that kind of like provocative statement. And like, I don't know if that's totally clear, but like, I think sometimes, like I'm thinking about Colin Kirkpatrick, who's like, whose kneeling was so controversial on the football field that he couldn't even, play in the NFL or whatever. And now you see like all major league sports right now, everybody is kneeling and everybody is doing it. And those people are going to be applauded. Good for you for recognizing it. But let's look back at these, at these people who were brave enough to do it when they were the only one doing it.
Yeah. Oh, I completely agree with you. And which brings us then to the fifth song, because it's called Black Boys on Mopeds. And I mean, this is like, you listen to it. Here, Peter, play the chorus, and then I want to talk about it. Play 115.
England's not the mythical land of Madame George and roses. It's the home of police who kill black boys on mopeds. And I love my boy, and that's why I'm leaving.
So what you just said, it couldn't have segued perfectly into this
I know
song.
what I'm doing.
Because,
This is not my first
yeah,
rodeo.
Dude, you're killing it. You're killing it, dude. All right. But this is a song about a 1989 incident in England where Nicholas Bramble, a black youth, was riding his moped when he got chased by the police who thought he'd stolen it. He ended up crashing and dying, but his death was ruled accidental, which caused many to accuse the police of racism. I mean, that is sadly still relevant today, and especially the line, "These are dangerous days. To say what you feel is to dig your own grave."
She's basically like a fucking prophet. I mean, this woman is like, she's writing to us from this time where she's like, hello, everyone, wake the fuck up. And now here we are 30 years later still having these conversations.
Yeah. Let me ask you, do you feel like politics and music lift each other up?
I mean, I've always found the conversation, this is not because of your question, I'm not trying to be like,
No.
I've always found the conversation around the idea of politics, identity, and music, and how those things intersect to be so generally disappointing. Like the fact that we think that these things can be separated, or that they can be, whenever I hear like a pop star say like, I'm not a political person. And I just find it really frustrating. Like if you are conscious and living in this world and paying attention, I don't understand how your existence can't be couched in some kind of politic, except if you are in the majority and you are white and you are not suffering anything and you are not paying attention to the inequities or the things that you're profiting off of because of your whiteness or your maleness or your cisness or your whatever. And so I think, like, I think that not everyone should be out writing political music, but I think that the idea that when people say that they're not political, what I think that often means is that they don't want to participate or use their position of power to speak to the inequities or the marginalized or the issues of people who are suffering. And I think that is fucked up. I'm not saying that Adele has to put out, or Taylor Swift or whoever, that they have to put out like Rage Against the Machine records. I just don't think they have to, but it is important to use your position. I really think it's crucial.
No, I agree. I mean, it's what's beautiful now, like you said about Colin Kaepernick, is that now everybody is inspired and now they're using it. And it sucks to be that trailblazer,
Sure,
because you just get ostracized and shit on and pushed aside. And it's just like, it makes so much sense. Dude, it's almost like this record couldn't have come on the list at a better time for, I think, all of our listeners and me, and probably you included, to rehash this, because it's so important.
Yeah.
All right. We've come to the hit of all hits.
Let's skip
Nothing
it.
compares to you. This is so like you said, this was written by Prince for The Family, which was a band on his Paisley Park label created after the breakup of The Time. And even though this is another cover, I think this still imbues it with the same heavy, conflicted feelings about her mother. And then, like we talked about, the emotional music video that stays so close on her face, and then the single tear. I think people immediately don't even think of Prince when they hear this. This is a Sinead O'Connor song. And in my opinion, this might be one of the best moments of her entire career from this clip we're about to play. Peter, play it.
I went to the doctor and guess what he told me? Guess what he told me? He said, girl, you better try to have fun no matter what you do. But he's a fool, 'cause nothing compares to you.
So you probably noticed this, being that you're an artist, a musician, but in the first chorus, she doesn't do that D minor. And in the second one, that D minor that she plays as she's singing is so heartbreaking. And the fact that they didn't do it on the first chorus just adds so much gravity to what she's singing after those lines that we just played. I think this song is perfect. I think this is, when I hear it, it takes me right back to 1990 on the school bus. And what's so great about it, it's much like Yesterday by the Beatles, where when people cover this, like, have you heard the Chris Cornell version of this?
I haven't.
Ah, Sarah, you've got to listen to it. And especially with him being gone,
Yeah.
it just adds so much weight. I think this is a perfect song. It's so iconic.
Yeah.
What does it do to you?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a masterpiece. I would put it up there with I Will Always Love You. Like I think these are masterpieces. Lyrically, melodically, and while not every version is a masterpiece, this song can be sung by almost anyone. It's kind of like Hallelujah, where
Yeah, no, completely. Yeah.
Everyone takes a shot at Hallelujah, and you're like, even the bad versions, you're like, but it's a great song.
Yeah.
Like it can't be complete shit, But I was gonna say too about this song. I went to go see Sinead O'Connor this year in Vancouver. She came through and toured, and the concert it had up and down moments. I didn't think it was like spectacular. I have lots of thoughts about that I would only share with my therapist and myself. But it was so fascinating when she sang this song. It was like the whole room. It was like the whole show just totally changed. Like every single person in the room was singing, including me. I cried.
Oh, I bet.
And I just, in that moment, I sort of feel, like, sort of to use a religious reference, I've never been a religious person. I don't have that feeling of like standing in a church and singing about this, this idea or whatever. But in this moment, it felt like, it didn't feel like a concert experience. It felt like something much more elevated than that. And I think, something that you said, I think it's transporting in this way that is just like not always the case with music that I loved when I was young. I listen to it and I'll think that sounds like crap, or yeah, that's still pretty cool. Like this song is bulletproof. It is perfect. Every time you hear it, it doesn't matter where it is. You will never grow sick of it. It is a masterpiece fully.
It is a masterpiece, yeah. So I have two things I'm about to tell you that are going to change. It's not going to take it down from the masterpiece.
Okay.
But it's definitely going to open. If you didn't know these, this is going to blow your mind. All right. So first thing, Prince didn't like this version.
I do know that.
You do? Oh, I'm sorry. Well,
I think I feel like Prince
I didn't
didn't
mean
like.
to waste your time.
I feel like Prince didn't like anyone or anything. So
yeah, 100%.
it's like-
Yeah, unless they're basketball and pancakes,
Yeah.
according to Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
All right, and then this is the thing. I don't know if you know this one. But even though this song sounds like it's about a lost lover, it's more than likely that Prince wrote this song about his favorite housekeeper, Sandy, who had to leave him suddenly. Sandy used to do everything for him, including wash all his socks and underwear, put out fresh flowers, and pour him his favorite beverage, Five Alive. Thoughts on that? Because if you listen to the lyrics,
Yeah,
read the lyrics,
It fits.
it could be that. Could be a lost lover too.
Sure. I mean,
But it could
I
be
think
about Sandy.
my thoughts on that is like, sure. I mean, we all get like, Prince was from a different planet. He really,
Yeah.
He. My understanding, reading about him, and I've known some people who worked for him. I think when you're operating and vibrating on like this other level, it must just be exhausting to be around the rest of us. Like we are just moving in slow fucking motion. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it is, I'm not even making light of this. Like, I think it is when you are that prodigious and like elevated and next level, I'm sure being around the rest of us is like being around like a bunch of fucking dogs licking their asses all day. Like you're just like,
Yeah.
So I think like I sort of have always looked at Prince and things that he felt or said or did or whatever as if like he was sort of this man trapped in another world, like I just, even though like some of his behavior is just abhorrent and I hear stories of like him just being like such an asshole, like just,
Yeah.
Whatever, like I'm like, but it just give him a pass because it must have just been exhausting for him, to have to deal with all of our shit. But like this, I don't care that he doesn't like this version. And in some weird way, I mean, just like armchair psychologist here, like him disapproving or rejecting Sinead O'Connor's version is like, is sort of like the mother or the God or the church rejecting her and her, like whatever. Like it just probably played into her sort of like martyrdom and her victimhood. Like here she had made this fucking masterpiece and the author of that song just kind of like, nah, it's not that great. And then he recorded his own version, right? Like then he was like,
yes, he did.
But it's not great.
No, this one is like, in full disclosure, this one and the Chris Cornell one carry so much weight for me. This one, of course, superseding it by like 1,000,000%. Also, I just want to say, you talking about what Prince must feel being around us, I think it was the perfect explanation of what it's like to be a genius dealing with idiots.
I mean,
it's just
100%.
He must have been so pissed off
Yeah.
all the time, man. Oh my God.
I always hear these stories. I love the Prince stories. I mean, even if they're like totally embellished, which actually I don't think they are. I do know people who worked with him, and I mean, he's sort of like the did you watch The Watchmen on HBO?
Oh my God, yeah.
You know how like is it Jeremy Irons? He's like in that world where he has like the
The people he keeps like rebirthing.
Yeah,
or
and
whatever,
he's just like ruthlessly, cruelly killing them all and like trying to get out of the world he's stuck in. I feel like that's Prince. Like I feel
that's
like
Prince with like Apollonia.
I think no, but like there was a few people close to him that I think like probably were like he deemed like operating on this level, but like the rest of us, like we're just like ants, I think.
Yeah. Prince gets a pass.
He gets a
Prince gets a
total
pass.
fucking
No,
pass.
it's like, yeah, if you're that, like, listen, people always say don't meet your idols, and I love Tom York from Radiohead, but I do not want to meet him because if I do, I could imagine he's gonna hate me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Or he'll
just like
be,
Beck did.
or just like normal. Like I think one of the things about meeting people is also just like it is exhausting. I mean, I've been around so many of these like sort of like gigantically famous people, and it's like how exhausting to just have so many expectations and projections on you. And it's like, how do you live up to or not under, perform for someone and whatever. And it's like, sometimes it's probably you'd meet Tom York and he'd be like, he'd just like, he maybe he wouldn't have anything interesting to say. Maybe he would just be like having an off moment or something. I don't know.
100%. But it's like Prince, Tom York, Michael Jordan. They can be dicks if they want to people because they are the top of whatever it is that they do. Nobody can do better. That's why I always get mad when you find out people with no talent are assholes that are famous, and you're like, you didn't do anything to deserve that. You're an Instagram influencer. You can leave.
Yeah.
Give me some Prince. All right, Jump in the River. So this is the first single from the record, released in 1988 on the soundtrack to the Jonathan Demme movie Married to the Mob. Likely due to its inclusion in the movie, there's a gunshot ricochet sound right at the top, which really breaks the mood from the last song. Peter, play the intro.
Phone calls always left me unsure. They'd never say things of their own accord.
All right, that's funny because it actually does sound like, like a montage song from an 80s movie.
Yeah, it's
what I mean?
To me, this is the outlier song on the record where it just feels like it's like her, it feels like a different band, different era, like different whole different thing.
Yeah, I'm not listening. It doesn't flow with the whole record, but it is still a good song. Mm-hmm. That being said, it could be the fact that it was co-written with frequent collaborator Marco Pirroni, who played in Susie and the Banshees and Adam and the Ants. It also features Andy Rourke from the Smiths on bass and acoustic guitar. Mm-hmm. And the song is about her past relationship that's still around and her devotional willingness to take even bad advice from him. I wanted to ask you this. What was the worst record industry advice or suggestion that you and your sister have received?
I mean, I don't even know where to begin with that. That's like a whole series podcast. That's seasons of a podcast series.
Listen, we can do whatever we want now. We can go 4 hours if you want to and have nothing the rest of the day.
You know what? Here's the thing about advice. I think, where this is my very diplomatic answer. I think that what has always worked for me and Tegan is listening to our own guts. I think we are wise. We have 20 years of music industry experience. We didn't always, and it was really important for us to hear people out. We certainly had people in the music industry who were somewhat mentorish to us, like Neil Young's manager Elliot Roberts, who was the first person to give us a record deal, and was somebody who would pick up the phone anytime we would call, whether we were 20 or even as recently as in our mid 30s, when we just wanted to chat about industry things or trends or whatever. Having those kinds of people in our life was really important. Was the advice or the things that they said to us always right? No, but I think being able to be willing to hear people out, and then to also have enough strength and confidence in your own sort of like North Star that you don't get sort of pushed and pulled in too many different directions. And there have definitely been moments where people have said things to us that we just like leave the room and go like, holy shit. Like, can you imagine if we followed that?
No, completely. What was the one that you were like, holy shit, these people are disconnected to who we are?
I mean, like I said, there's been so many. I mean, there's they're just like a trillion minor little tiny moments. Like, I always laugh about marketing people because they are just trained. They are born to tell you every idea they have, even bad ones, because that's like the whole mission is like, give me all your ideas, even your bad ones. But we have heard some pretty bad ones. But my favorite that we still laugh about to this day, Walking with a Ghost, which was our first really like successful single in the United States. I remember sitting down with the marketing team, and there was this idea of like, you always have to sort of like, not bribe, but you have to like send like promotional materials to radio companies, because I guess that'll like make it stick in their mind, like, oh, this song, and I got this thing. And they wanted us to make Marshmallow Ghosts to send out with the single, and I just was like, this was like during a time where I was making about $21,000 a year. I was like touring 270 days in a van with my sister and a bunch of stinky guys, and like barely, eating out of gas station, racks or whatever. And I was like, the music industry is so stupid. Like, just like,
Yeah.
you're going to spend thousands of dollars making marshmallow ghosts out of plastic, like, and sending them to people, and that's going to get my single played. Like, I just remember being like, I'm dealing with idiots. Maybe I'm Prince. I don't know. I just felt like, but there's been a million terrible ideas, a million terrible offensive moments. But what I think really comes down to is like, if you have that idea in your mind of who you are and where you want to go, and you stay focused on that, I think that always sort of trumps any stupid idea.
Oh, completely. But it's funny when you were talking about traveling around with a bunch of stinky guys in a van. I would pay anything to do that right now.
Oh God,
just to get out of my fucking house.
Yeah.
You listen, and I think you know it. When you know like what you want in your art and who you are, and you know how to express that. Anytime somebody comes with an idea, I argue all the time with my producers of this, with either the producers of my television show, whatever it is, because it's like, it's like, what you are and you know what you want to do, and you can see the clear path to success. And so sometimes, Marshmallow Ghost is
maybe that would have been it. Maybe we could have had more success. I don't know. It might have been a crossover if some radio people had some marshmallows.
My TV show, it was the show that I created was called The Goddamn Comedy Jam, and one of the execs at Comedy Central said, well, we can't say goddamn, so how about we call it The Hot Damn Comedy Jam? And I was like, get the fuck out of here. It's The Hot Damn Comedy Jam. Doodaloo.
Sometimes bad ideas also reinforce what you believe about your idea. And I think that's important. Elliot Roberts, Neil Young's manager, I remember when we delivered our second album to Vapor Records, which was the label that he and Neil had, I remember they didn't like it. He didn't like it. And I remember him saying, like, I just really see your guys' future more rooted in acoustic music and folk music. And, like, let people hear your voices, and, don't be afraid of whatever it is that you're afraid of, this stigma of folk music. And we were just like, fuck that. Like, we want to play rock music, and we want to do this thing. And, later on, again, another sure sign that someone is truly wise is I remember him coming to us after another album or two and just saying, like, you guys made the right path. You guys forged your own path. You didn't follow in the footsteps of like what people like us would have potentially thought for you generationally. You forged your own path. You saw indie rock in the way that it was evolving, and the way that it was eventually going to intersect with pop music. And there was a lot of like, there was an acknowledgement of the fact that by not listening to him, we had done something important for ourselves. And I think, like, if he hadn't said that to us and we hadn't had to sort of like come up with that resolve of like, no, this is the right path for our band. I don't know. Maybe we would have ended up doing something different. I don't know.
Yeah, completely. All right. Not to skip over You Cause As Much Sorrow, but I wanted to get the final song I really want to talk about is The Last Day of Our Acquaintance.
Favorite song on the record.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, thank God, because I was always worried that I skip over ones that you might love.
No.
Funny that you say that, because and I have to leave Nothing Compares to You off of when I talk about my favorite song on it, because that's so big and you have to appreciate the other ones. This definitely probably is one of my favorites. Also, I think it's just because it starts off so timidly with her acoustic, but then like 3.5 minutes in, it's just like you can hear the bitterness like crest, and the guitars start hitting so hard, and then the drums come in. Peter, play 304 when the drums kick in.
I'm torn, but you won't listen to me. I know your answer already. This is the last day of our acquaintance.
So good.
That ho 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 part. Oh my God.
It's punk, man.
That's
like that song to me is a punk song. It is.
Yes.
It is. It's like it's using that kind of like the power of, like you said, it's the absence of all of those, like the heavier guitars. It's the absence of her, the anger in her voice, the absence of drums, but she knows when she's using it that it's like pins and needles. It's electricity. It's exciting. It's powerful.
Yeah. So this addresses her divorce with John Reynolds, but in a much more clinical and detached way, as if it's between the lawyers she sings about. The funny thing is, the drums on the record were played by John Reynolds, and you can feel like when it kicks in and she starts singing like that and doing those ho-ho-hos, that's like a real, like you can feel that fuck you to him. Do you know what I mean? Like she is just laying it out there. So I wanted to ask you this. Have you ever sung an angry song about someone with them in the audience?
Yeah, I think I've definitely performed for people I've written music about, and I've certainly had the experience of performing when things aren't great for that person, and then also sort of like where there's almost like you fully detached from the fact that the song was written about that person and they're there. Like it's like, the thing that's so beautiful about music is that it can, just like for the listener, just like for fans, when you heard this album, you might have been thinking about a relationship you were having in the 90s, and now you're like, it's 30 years and you might be able to apply this music to your life experience or your situation now. I feel the same way as a writer. Like when I wrote Walking with a Ghost, for example, I was 23 years old, and I was just moving to Montreal, and I was a young person, and I had just gone through a breakup, and I'd had a really big crush on a girl I barely knew, and she was the ghost in my mind that I was, traveling around the city with and thinking about and pining for. And like that, I don't think about that story anymore when I sing that song. I don't think about that, the origin of that. That energy is no longer in the song for me. It's not rooted in the song for me.
Yeah. Wow. I love it. All right. You want to do some facts and get out of here?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. These are the last facts in the podcast. Facts. All right. Even though she was nominated for 4 Grammys for this album and won 1 for Nothing Compares to You, Sinead refused to accept the nominations or the award in protest to the materialism of the music industry. Kind of reminds me of what like Fiona did when she won the I think
MTV.
it was the MTV award, where she was like, this is bullshit, it's fake, don't care about us. So I wanted to ask you, because you and Tegan have also stood up for your beliefs and for those without a voice. I want you to tell my listeners about the Tegan and Sara Foundation and how my fans, the Fleece Army, can get involved and help.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so obviously Tegan and I are gay, and we are happily and proudly political and gay at the same time. And we have always looked for ways to, use our position and our connections and our relationships within the music industry, and also our audience to raise money and redistribute that money back into the community that we're from. So specifically, we focus on self-identified women and girls within the LGBTQ plus community. So we're talking about local organizations, grassroots social justice type organizations who generally work in the areas of leadership, mentorship, healthcare, education. This can look like micro grants for organizations that pay for bus passes for LGBTQ folks living in rural communities who want to have access to a social worker or a therapist. This might be, grants that allow summer camps who center and focus LGBTQ staff and campers. This might be for example, we did a big hackathon at the Broad Institute, which is part of MIT in Boston, where we looked at healthcare data that is collected in the United States at hospitals that identifies sexuality, and looked at what are some of the trends or what are some of the pros and cons of having that data on the queer community. So we work across a broad spectrum of areas, and primarily the money that we raise is collected from a sort of promise and pact we made publicly that we would donate $1 from every concert ticket we ever sell goes back to the foundation. And we've been able to raise close to $1 million just through initiatives like that, through auctioning off guitars, through generosity from our record label. We've had a few music projects that they've let us use all of the profits for, and the money gets redistributed back into these communities of need.
That's so great. You forget that, because, living in Los Angeles or New York or like DC, the three places I've lived in, you see the gay community there, and they have like West Hollywood and DuPont Circle. It's like you almost sometimes forget that there are gays and lesbians and non-binary, whatever, in all parts of the country where they might feel like the only homosexual. And it's like, just to feel that connection, it's like to feel that their community is there is so important.
Yeah, and I think also too, like, it's really important to understand that being gay is not necessarily, the primary issue. Like, when we're looking at the queer community and the LGBTQ community broadly, we're talking about people who have a number of different identities. So, like, we might be talking about people who are Black, or people of color, or people with disability, or people with financial struggles. Like, the reality is that we're not just trying to raise awareness and be like, gay people are great. Like, we're talking about the real life inequities and discriminatory practices and the lack of legal protections. We're talking about people who are sort of facing a myriad of issues that, make their lives difficult or dangerous. And while I totally appreciate the historical, public, well-known legacies of the gay rights movement, things like marriage equality, I mean, there are just like an endless number of things that our community struggles with, especially when we look at the intersectionality of our queer community identities.
Yeah. All right. Well, Fleece Army, help any way you can.
Yeah. There's lots. It's actually, I was going to say, we're going to be announcing a really fun campaign coming up in the next week or two. We are, our album, So Jealous, which is almost 20 years old now, which has a song like, so it has Walking with a Ghost on it. We are auctioning off the guitars that we made that we used to make that album, that we toured that album with. And it's going to be a really easy buy, and you can buy a ticket for $10 and get put into to a big draw. And we're going to be giving those guitars away in September on our 40th birthday. So I'm really excited about that.
Oh, that is so great. That is so great. What a great way to celebrate your 40th birthday too. And then also, when you say the album's 20 years old, you're like, huh, you get that like pit in your stomach. Like,
it's
oh
shocking. It'll be 20 in 2024, but we're like coming up close enough.
By the time we get out of the quarantine.
Well,
yeah,
it'll be
perfect. 2024. All right. In March 2015, Sinead announced that she wouldn't sing Nothing Compares to You anymore, as she'd run out of emotional inspiration to do it justice live. But in September of 2019, she sang a stunning version of it live on an Irish late show while wearing her hijab. The clip became a viral sensation, and she was offered her own show. Wow, it's like, how lucky were you to be able to see that and not to... It's almost like seeing, and like we brought up Radiohead earlier, but like the way that like they won't sing Creep anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, you can imagine. I mean, do you have songs like that you guys are kind of just... You're like, oh, Jesus. Like, no,
we're sellouts. We'll do whatever our audience wants. We barely have any rules for, I'm kidding. But there's nothing that there's been times where I haven't wanted to sing certain songs. You get sick of stuff,
sure.
Or you don't want to sing it the way that everyone expects you to sing it. There's like totally moments like that in our career. Like I pretty much have stopped playing guitar for the last 10 years because I was tired. That's it. That's the reason. It was exhausting to carry it. I weigh about 105 pounds. The guitar's heavy. My shoulder was fucked up. I was always at the chiropractor. I wanted to just focus on singing. And it was unbelievable how annoying that was to people. People were like, we still get messages to this day. We just did a tour where I played guitar, played piano, every song. It was just me and Tegan on stage. And I saw a comment the other day where this guy was like, I hope you guys consider playing instruments moving forward. Every show I've seen since whatever, the con, you don't play any instruments. And I was like, get fucked. I played first of all, I am an instrument.
Yeah.
I don't have to play a guitar if I don't want to. But I think there's those moments where you're contrarian and you think like, I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to play songs the way I want to play them. And so I respect Sinead for not playing her biggest hit. I don't care. But I will say, as someone in the audience, I would have felt really sad.
Yeah.
But she played all of my other favorite songs, so I could have walked away feeling like respect but she did it, and it was like a transformative moment.
That was the icing, man. That was the icing on the cake to
great.
make it the spiritual experience.
Yeah.
Also, fuck that dude. If we've learned anything today, be Prince. Be Prince. You deserve it.
I try not to engage because I know that people are just, it's just the world we live in now. Everybody's got a fucking opinion.
Everybody's got a voice.
Yeah.
Fucking social media. It's all started with Tom from MySpace, and now here we are.
Fuck you, Tom.
Fuck you, Tom. All right. But you know what's funny? Tom right now, if he heard us say that, be like, cool, I sold MySpace for like $2 billion, so I'm Prince. All right, last fact. All right, so after all the love following this album, Sinead forced a spectacular backlash in the U.S. after refusing to let the national anthem be played before her concert in New Jersey, and then protesting, like we talked about, the Catholic Church's abuse through scandals by surprisingly tearing up a picture of the Pope on Saturday Night Live during an a cappella version of Bob Marley's song War. Yeah, I forgot that she was singing War. And she was banned from SNL for life, and her career never really recovered because of that. So I wanted to ask you, what was your most controversial moment?
I mean, again, we certainly have held our own and spoken out, and I know that we have faced, I don't want to say a backlash. I don't think we ever have had a backlash, but I think that we have certainly taken positions that we knew would have impacts on our career or on the way that we were treated by certain institutions. Like, for example, speaking out about, the sexism and misogyny in the music industry, speaking out about some of our award shows and our grants and funding here in Canada, and how, whether intentional or not, are often extremely biased and certainly like our technical and, production roles, like those types of things, like they're always men. Every time the award season comes up, I'm like, oh, good, 5 more white guys are going to get nominated for this award or whatever. And we've like spoken out about that. And I know everybody in the music industry knows these things or can understand these things, but I know that because we were part of a movement that addressed them, that changes the way people feel about you and the way that they think about you and the way that they consider you when you're up for certain things. And I think we've just made peace with that. When we've had a lot of public conversation about the fact that music festivals are always white guys. And it's, the people who book those festivals are still in power. So when you speak out about that, I don't think they're rushing to put you on the show, and I think, but we've made peace with it because it's been more important for us to, to speak our mind about what we see happening. And I just think like if somebody puts an obstacle in front of us, we just find another way to get to where we want to go. But yeah, I don't feel like we've ever really experienced the kind of backlash that someone like Sinead O'Connor has faced.
No, I get it. Sarah, this was fantastic. And what's sad, this happens to me a lot, but I'm feeling it a lot on this record, is that I have to move on now from this album. And it's like I really just started to like absorb it and really understand it, but this couldn't have been a better way to put this record to bed and move on, because this conversation was so fantastic.
I love that you're doing this, and I also, like, I'm sure you already did all of this, but like one of the things that I do love about the internet is that beyond this album, there are so many absolutely astonishing live videos on the internet of Sinead O'Connor during this era. I mean, I have sat with friends and watched her perform these songs at the height of this album and her sort of fame in the 90s, and they are revolutionary. I mean, they're incredible to watch. And if people haven't seen that stuff, my God, I beg you to look for them on the internet. They're incredible.
I watched the one that we had wrote about, the 2019 performance of her singing Nothing Compares to You. Mm-hmm. You need to watch Chris Cornell singing it. I think you'll love it.
I will.
But also, is there anything that you want to promote?
Just, we're here. We're still alive. So hope everyone remembers when this is all over.
Just in case the internet was, remember when they said they were trending and they were dead?
We didn't die.
Alive.
We did not die. We're old, but we're not dead. So I hope, hopefully, no, I'm just kidding. No, I'm thrilled. I would love if people checked out the Tegan and Sara Foundation and could participate in our upcoming fundraising attempts, because as you know, touring has been canceled, and that is where we do the vast majority of our fundraising for the foundation. And so, unfortunately, we will be losing a great deal of our funding this year. And so we're trying to come up with some other fun ways to pick your pocket. So yeah, check that out. That would be amazing.
Go to the Tegan and Sara Foundation, pay the $10, get in the raffle for the guitar. I bet you know, and if you don't get the guitar, maybe you'll get a pick. Maybe you'll get a guitar strap. But Sarah, this was just fantastic. I mean it.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
What did I tell you? What did I tell you guys? The one and only Sarah Quin. Get their brand new record from Tegan and Sara. Hey, We're Just Like You, the remixes. Like I said, it came out last Friday. Also, check out their brand new video, I Know I'm Not the Only One, as part of a 25-minute special on their YouTube channel. And like we talked about in the podcast, take a deep dive into the Tegan and Sara Foundation and see how you can help fight for health, economic justice, and representations for LGBTQ girls and women. Do whatever you can to help and support the Tegan and Sara Foundation. I love that they do this. And if you guys want to find Tegan and Sara gardening at home on IGTV, they are at Tegan and Sara on Instagram and Twitter, and their website is teganandsara.com. Now, we just listened to Sinead O'Connor from 1990. This week, our new music pick by, my special friend, Matt Pinfield, is Phoebe Bridgers. You're listening to her epic new song, I Know the End. It's a track that's perfect for these pandemic end times. Phoebe is an American singer-songwriter from LA, and she's released 2 albums under her name, including the fantastic Punisher, which came out in June. Phoebe cites Sinead as a major influence on her music and covered Black Boys on Mopeds just last week on KEXP. And you can find links to that cover as well as her other music on our website, the500podcast.com. And if you like the song that you're playing and want that to be your song from your band, send us your song if you're influenced. Send it to 500podcast@gmail.com and make sure you put the album and artist that influenced you in the subject line. I want to play your music on my podcast. Help me help you. Next week is the Clash week as we go deep into their 1980 album, Sandinista. Ooh, it's a goodie. It's Dougal up the Kashloogle. You got some homework to do. Listen to the records. Stay fleecy. A Dougal. Cadougal.
So I gotta go. I know. When the sirens sound, you'll hide under the floor. But I'm not gonna go down with my hometown in a tornado. I'm gonna chase it. I know. I gotta go now. I know. Driving out into the sun, let the ultraviolet cover me up. We're looking for a creation mess. Ended up with a pair of cracked lips. Windows down, scream along to some America First rap country song. A slaughterhouse, an outlet mall, slot machines, fear of God, windows disappear.